Welcome to Scarlet Tavern. Grab a drink, take a seat, and let's begin. Today we're taking a wild ride through the world of the Unification Church, a cult that's got more twists and turns than a soap opera on Fast Forward. So buckle up because we're about to uncover how a group of people found themselves united by a mission to, well, save the world from an apocalypse that never quite showed up. Get ready to laugh, gasp, and maybe question your insanity as we explore the fascinating tale of the Unification Church. This is Scarlet Tavern. Alright, so Unification Church,
I know, I was scratching my head during the researching this. I was scratching my fucking head.
This Unification Church, so they're technically considered, because they were mentioned in a book called Doomsday Cults. So they are considered a Doomsday Cult. However, they're not anything like Fiat Lux, who we're going to touch on, or anything like that. They are very much a cult. They're more of a predatory cult where they take your money, they take everything from you. They're creepy Koreans.
I mean, I think the best way to describe these guys is very insidious. So they are not the wacko French Canadian cult that we talked about in the last episode, but they are not just a bunch of misunderstood Christian denominations. These guys are very insidious. These guys frequently, I was shocked too when I was writing it, just how many political movements and events these guys are financing and sponsoring, how many world leaders they know, shake hands with, and even have speak for them at their events. It is truly astounding and kind of scary, really, how much of their tentacles go into corporate
Just remember that the leader of this is North Korean, so
yes,
from the 20s.
Oh, but he never quite, as we're gonna find out, never quite detangled himself from the People's Republic.
So, the Unification Church is a new religious movement that emerged from Christianity with its adherents known as Unificationists, or less formally Moonies. Founded by Sun Myung Moon, the movement began attracting followers shortly after World War II. On May 1st, 1954, Moon officially established the Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity, or the HSAUWC, in Seoul, South Korea. This was the full name for the Unification Church until 1994, when it was renamed the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. FWPU. That's what I say. FWPU.
The whole time I was staring at this, I never put that.
FWPU. The organization now operates in approximately 100 countries globally. Sun Myung Moon, born as Young Myung Moon on January 6, 1920, in modern-day North Pyongan Province, North Korea, was the second son in a farming family of 13 children, 8 of whom survived. During this period, Korea was under Japanese rule. Initially, Moon's family practiced Confucianist beliefs until he was around 10 years old, at which point they converted to Christianity and joined the Presbyterian Church. Well, there's their biggest problem, is becoming Presbyterians.
Although we must note that at least they didn't join the Seventh-day Adventists, who seem to be the source of like 80% of all cults out there.
At the age of 16, Moon claimed to have a religious vision of Jesus, which said defined his life mission.
Also, ahead of time to any of our members who are from Korea or of Korean descent, relatives, any of that, sorry for our assuredly butchering of Korean names. We don't mean anything by it.
Unless you're from North Korea, then we do.
We don't care. We hate communists here.
Yes.
But
death to the commies.
But if you got out of North Korea, you're not the problem.
Yeah. Well,
death to the commies.
Yeah. If you're. Yeah.
In 1941, Moon began studying electrical engineering at Waseda University in Japan. While in Japan, he collaborated with members of the Communist Party and the Korean independence movement against Imperial Japan. He returned to Seoul in 1943 and married his first wife, Sun Kil Choi, in 1944. They had a son named Sung Jin Moon. During the 1940s, Moon attended a church led by Kim Baek Moon, who preached about a new Israel and influenced Moon's theological development. Around this time, Moon changed his name to Sun Myung to mitigate the resentment from other Christians as he started gathering followers.
I always found it odd when I was reading this, how he was able to somehow avoid being conscripted into the Imperial Japanese military or anything, because the Japanese basically used the Koreans as slave labor or cannon fodder for their military. I'm sure he's just
by being religious.
I mean, they didn't. I mean, Japan didn't care as long as they could. You could hold a rifle and you could yell out "Banzai" if you charged with a bayonet on your rifle. They didn't.
Probably because he was in school.
Yeah.
They didn't care about that either.
Yeah.
They ripped people out from whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
After World War II, Korea was divided along the 38th parallel into two trustyships controlled by the United States and the Soviet Union. Pyongyang, which later became the capital of North Korea, was a center of Christian activity until 1945. From the late 1940s, many Korean Christian religious figures were killed or disappeared in concentration camps. In 1946, Moon started his own movement, an early version of the Unification Church in Pyongyang. The Soviet-controlled North Korean government imprisoned and allegedly tortured him. Sources differ on the reasons for his arrest, which include religious persecution, espionage charges, or accusations of polygamy. There are also controversial claims that Moon's religious practices included unorthodox sexual rituals, which the Unification Church denies and some scholars question.
I mean, this is pretty common in communist, socialist governments. Any movements that take away attention from the state or the party, they just make up charges and to kind of discredit them. So
yeah.
I don't think it's true.
Moon was arrested again in 1948 and sentenced to 5 years at the Hungnam labor camp. He was liberated by the United Nations troops during Korean War in 1950 and allegedly traveled by foot to Busan, South Korea. His experiences in the labor camp reinforced his staunch anti-communist stance. Moon interpreted the Cold War as a spiritual conflict between God and Satan, which divided Korea as its primary battleground.
Which is true. Korea was a huge hotbed in there.
But I don't know about the whole spiritual.
Yeah. No, that's just batshit crazy. That's just his interpretation.
Like, out of all the places that God and Satan would choose, they're going to choose Korea.
Yeah, that's a weird place to do it. Plus the fact that
who cares about Korea?
It's always odd that religious figures, that especially ones who are in the Christian religion, trying, it's natural to put the bad guys as Satan, but it's like communism is devoid of religion. Why are you putting a religious symbol as it was to a godless entity?
Welcome to free will, everybody.
Yep.
After years of separation from his wife and child, Moon and Choi divorced in 1952 or 55, we're not sure. Moon moved back to Seoul and continued his ministry, facing additional arrests on suspicion of religious orgies and draft evasion, both of which were overturned.
I can see the religious orgies being fake, but the draft evasion thing, I believe
Probably
that.
Not.
Oh no, I believe the religious orgies were real.
Look
at our experience with cults.
Yeah, and once you get into deeper into some of the shit,
I
wouldn't put it past religious orgies.
In 1954, Moon formally founded the Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity in Seoul. God, that's the dumbest name for a church, just because it's a mouthful.
I find the translations from the Asiatic languages into English always seems to be really weird and wordy.
Yeah, but a lot of religions or a lot of Christian churches do that. They'll have like these huge names for these churches.
So the church that I went to, growing up, it was an Evangelical Free Church of America or something like that. It was like EFCLA or something like that.
That doesn't even roll off the tongue.
Yeah.
Well, Catholics do it too, because they
add
in
the Lutheran church that I grew up in.
Well, you have the Latter-day Saints and all of that.
It was the Evangelical Church of something America.
The only thing with Catholic churches is either you'll have like like my grade school, my parish was our we called it OMGC, Our Mother Good Counsel. That was that. That one, admittedly, was probably one of the longer ones I've seen. But then again, there's other places where the parish is like, it's St. Bernadette's Parish. That's it. The Church of St. Bernadette. That's it. It's, I mean, not that long, not that complicated. Now, that's not all churches like that, but they are. But there are a lot of them on the large in Catholicism. They're a little simple.
Let's just do a little side note. I found some weird church names.
Ooh, what we got?
The Corinth Baptist Church.
Corinth?
Yes. As in, Corinth, a place that struggled with sexual immorality in the Bible.
Oh.
And were numerously divided.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Flippin' Church of God. Because the town was called Flippin'. Yeah.
Okay, it's the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. That's what ELCA stands for.
Hellhole Swamp Baptist Church.
Oh, God.
Guided Missiles Church.
Guided Missiles?
Yeah. Little Hope Baptist Church.
Welcome today to Little Hope, everybody. I'm your reverend today. That's how I imagine.
Weedville United Methodist Church.
That's just funny.
Bethlehem Fire Baptized Holiness Church of God of the Americas.
What the? Oh, God.
Riding with Christ Cowboy Church.
Actually, I would like to go to that. I would
Except Jesus never rode a horse.
Who cares?
He rode a donkey.
Who cares? I just want to see it. I want to see it.
The one that everybody knows, Westboro Baptist Church, which we will do a thing on Westboro Baptist Church because they are fucktards. Nobody likes Westboro Baptist Church.
Here's the episode for that. They suck. May they burn in hell.
Yeah. But yeah, we will do a thing on Westboro Baptist because they're shitholes. So again, in 1954, Moon formally founded the Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity in Seoul. During this period, he fathered an illegitimate child who later died in 1969. In the 1950s, Moon quickly attracted young followers who helped establish church-affiliated business and cultural organizations. His teachings emphasized a conservative, family-oriented value system and his unique interpretation of the Bible. There are claims from a follower that she and Moon engaged in various religious sexual rituals and that she remained his mistress through his second marriage, bearing him another son in secret in 1965.
See, now
does not surprise me.
No, I mean, good Lord, it's almost a cliche. The preacher having an affair with one of a married woman or whatever in his congregation. I don't know if they're religious sexual rituals. I mean, unless she considers having sex with the reverend a religious ritual, and then I guess.
But the thing is, he could have said, this is a religious ritual.
Oh, of course.
That's why.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
he
whatever.
Got away with it.
I mean, whatever he probably needed to say to get in bed with her. Sure.
Yep. All right. So, Sun Myung Moon married his second wife, Hak Ja Han, in April 11th, 1960, in a ceremony known as the Holy Marriage. At the time, Han was 17 years old, while Moon was 40. Within the Unification Church, Han is revered as mother or true mother, and together with Moon, they were referred to as the true parents, and their family is known as the true family. Number 1, 40 and 17. Even in 1960, this is a no-no.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. That at 17... In most states, 17 is the age of consent. However, at 40 years old,
you have no business.
That's a child still.
Yeah.
That is the age of your children had they lived.
Yeah, you have no, as a 40-year-old, you have no right to be any way romantically involved with a 17-year-old.
Mm-hmm. Some of these especially rural families, this was considered back then. Now, granted, 1960 should have ended. It technically really started being in style around the 1930s. And again, this is Korea. This is not the United States, but
even for me, coming from a rural background, this still isn't okay.
Yeah. I mean, my aunt and uncle got married at 16 and 26. But my grandmother signed for it.
Yeah, but that's only 10 years.
And that was in the 80s.
This is like over 30 year age difference.
Oh, I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying it's just a lot of times these things.
It's a 23-year age difference.
Yeah, it did happen, and even from that point of that time frame, not that long before even that time frame. So yeah, it's still creepy as fuck though.
According to the teachings of the Unification Church, Jesus was considered divine but not God. He was intended to be the second Adam who would establish a perfect family by uniting with an ideal wife, thereby beginning the liberation of humanity from its sinful condition. However, Jesus was crucified before he could marry, which meant he redeemed humanity spiritually but not physically. The role of completing this task was left to the true parents, Moon and Han, who were believed to link married couples and their families to God, thus continuing the mission of creating a pure and sinless lineage.
Newsflash, it didn't work.
So, we are going to link married couples by having orgies, and you will then be pure to God. The Holy Spirit Association for Unification of World Christianity. So, Sun Myung Moon founded the Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity in Seoul on May 1st, 1954. The organization quickly expanded throughout South Korea, and by the end of 1955, it had established 30 centers nationwide in 1 year.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
The HSAUWC grew internationally with significant membership in South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, and other East Asian countries. In the 1970s, American members of the HSAUWC were particularly noted for their fundraising efforts to support various church projects. That's because us Americans know how to fundraise. I'll do you a bake sale.
Now, another thing that this church around this time, I believe it was also in the 70s, what they started doing also was getting into corporate thing. They started making money. This is when the church really is, and this is why they also Reverend Moon pushed for American and Japanese members, because then he could have the members open businesses and buy businesses in America.
Oh, it was even more than that.
Oh,
yeah. In 1955, the HSAUWC established the Collegiate Association for the Research of Principles, or CARP. According to CARP's website, its goal is to promote intercultural, interracial, and international cooperation through the unification worldview. J. Isamu Yamamoto in Unification Church noted that CARP has often been subtle about its association with the Unification Church, though the link between the two organizations has always been strong, as both aim to disseminate Moon's teachings. Excuse me. The HSAUWC also extended its missionary efforts to Europe, entering Czechoslovakia in 1968 and remaining underground until the 1990s. The movement began missionary work in South America in the 70s and made significant investments in civic organizations and business projects, including an international newspaper. In the 1990s, the HSAUWC expanded into Russia and other former communist nations. Hak Ja Han, Moon's wife, made a radio broadcast from the state Kremlin palace to the Russian nation. By 1994, the HSAUWC had approximately 5,000 members in Russia, and about 500 Russian students had been sent to the United States for 40-day workshops.
See, now this was
this woman was in the Kremlin.
Yeah. I mean, this was during when Boris Yeltsin was in charge. I mean, the Russians called this time period the 90s the wild 90s. I mean, all kinds of crazy shit was going on because you had just this huge tidal wave of Western European, American influences just flooding into Russia, and religion, fashion, everything, and it was bizarre. This is also around the time Vladimir Putin was coming to power, too. God, did they meet Vladimir Putin?
Maybe that's what's wrong. And I mean, and you still, at this point, because the Soviet Union didn't really fall until 91.
91, yeah.
So you still have bits of the Soviet Union in there that they're fucking with.
Oh, yeah.
And pulling all of their people into this, going from the Soviet Union, because they're trying to fuck over communism.
Yeah.
So they're pulling all of these Soviet Union people and bringing them into this. So there's some good stuff that they did, which was fucking over Russia and fucking with them by speaking from the Kremlin.
Oh yeah, I mean, what kind of a power move is that? You know, the organization that basically was founded by somebody who hate, loathe, and despise communists, and he goes to the spiritual center of communism and preaches his beliefs. Now, again, I'm not endorsing his beliefs, but it's like,
he got some big balls.
I mean, that's like the equivalent of, you know, the U.S. going to the Kremlin and it's like, we're going to raise the stars.
It'd be like us going to North Korea and sitting in Kim Jong-un's throne and just chilling.
Yeah.
That's what it would be.
She has some balls. I'll give her that.
Moon moved to the United States in 1971 while retaining a South Korean citizenship. Throughout the 1970s, he delivered a series of public speeches in the U.S., including notable events at Madison Square Garden in New York City in 1974, Yankee Stadium in New York City in 1976, and the Washington Monument in D.C., where he spoke to 300,000 people about God's hope for America. In 1975, the HSA-UWC organized one of the largest peaceful gatherings in history with 1.2 million people in Yeouido, South Korea.
This is where also the Unification Church is also starting to really get into politics. They are really starting to, and especially U.S. politics, a lot of the conservative, family-oriented movements starting to be started, and they are starting to get a lot of money from the Unification Church. One of the notable persons that the Reverend Moon was able to make friends with was former President George H.W. Bush and Barbara Bush. They actually got them both to become keynote speakers for one of their in-house rallies.
I think it was actually the Madison Square Garden one.
I think it was a little later, but it was like...
I think he had a couple at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, it was one of the things where this was very low-key. Like, everybody who's doing this is very... This is not something they're well known for. They're still doing these speeches, but it's very low-key. This is where the church...
Because I think people are catching on to what they're about.
Well, Reverend Moon actually spent time in a U.S. prison here. It wasn't for anything nefarious. I mean, he just didn't pay his taxes. So he ended up, and he accumulated a lot of money and defrauded the U.S. government of some tax money. He did 18 months in prison, which I believe was very controversial because, again, they painted it as you're persecuting the church and the Reverend's message. But, you know, to his credit, he did his time, and he just kind of did his time. He worked in the prison kitchen, actually. And he just kind of did his time and he left, and that was it.
So, the political connections that the church had. Richard Nixon, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, Mikhail Gorbachev, which was the Soviet president, North Korean president Kim Il-sung, and Nation of Islam leader Luis Farrakhan.
No accounting for taste.
So, and we'll get into it too, but Unification Church now, they still exist. Yeah. They've just changed their name. They're Rod of Iron Ministries now. But we'll get into that, because that was in 2013 they did that. In Pennsylvania, of all places. So, during the 70s, the Unification Church, along with other new religious movements, became a target of anti-cult movement, with critics accusing it of brainwashing its members. In 1976, American Unification Church President Neil Albert Salonen met with Senator Bob Dole to defend the HSA-UWC against these charges, including those made by concerned parents of members. The Unification Church's involvement in the seafood industry began at Moon's direction as he sought to expand into what he called the Oceanic Providence. Let's reach Atlantis. Let's bring this to Atlantis.
You'll see, he gets kind of weird with it.
Oh, yeah. In 1976 and 77, the church invested nearly $1 million in the U.S. seafood industry. Moon delivered a speech in 1980 titled The Way of Tuna, where he described his vision of building a complete seafood supply chain and declared himself king of the ocean. He suggested marrying American and Japanese members to circumvent fishing restrictions imposed by the 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone, promoting Japanese members who married Americans as leaders in the fishing industry. Moon famously declared that Gloucester is almost a Mooney town now.
Gloucester is a big fishing town in Massachusetts.
So, yeah.
Yeah. He was very notorious for the interracial marriages to get what he wanted.
Yeah.
He did that.
But he never married interracially.
No.
He did that with a lot of like the Americans.
Mm-hmm.
So then everybody could have essentially dual citizenship.
And we give the church access to
American everything.
Mm-hmm. Because that's where the money was.
Yep.
Yeah. So in 1976, Unification Church members founded News World Communications, an international news media corporation. Its initial publications were the News World, later renamed the New York City Tribune, and the Spanish language Noticias del Mundo, published in New York until early 1990s. In 1982, the New York Times described News World as the newspaper unit of the Unification Church. Moon's son, Hyun Jin Moon, served as chairman of the board. News World Communication owns several media outlets, including United Press International, The World and I, Tiempos del Mundo in Latin America, the Segye Ilbo in South Korea, the Sakai Nippo in Japan, the Zambezi Times in South Africa, and the Middle East Times in Egypt. Until 2008, it published the Washington, D.C.-based news magazines Insight on the News and owned the Washington Times until 2010, when Sun Myung Moon and former Times editors repurchased the paper from News World.
I mean, this is a cult
that owned media all across the world.
Yep.
When researching this, we found that a lot of the information that we were finding, even from newspapers,
was written by them.
It wasn't even that. It was like they almost read like sermons. Like it's like with other cults, we found they were just cold, sterile, forensic facts. This is all the horrible stuff they did. This stuff, it's like
it's because they controlled everything.
This is again, this
still do to some extent.
Like during the research stuff, I didn't. After I found out about like them owning the news and stuff, I'm like, well, this is going to be a very biased research.
What we just need a war between Unification Church and Scientology. See who comes out on top.
Actually, so I was telling this to Pam. I'm a big fan of the game Dead Space. If you all haven't played it, play it. It's a great game.
Never. It's a horror game.
That means it's awesome. Anyway, one of the main antagonists in there, besides the space zombies, are the Church of Unitology. Now, they get a lot of comparisons on the outside to Scientology for all their weird, bizarre beliefs. To the Church of Scientology, I make no apologies. But when you delve into the lore of the game and then the Church of Unitology, they really, honest to God, they take most of it from the Church of Unification. Just the insidiousness and how much they branch out into all everyday society.
So starting in the 1980s, Moon directed HSA UWC members to participate in the Home Church program, which focused on community outreach through public service. In April 1990, Moon visited the Soviet Union and met with President Mikhail Gorbachev. Nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
Expressing support for the political and economic reforms taking place. Concurrently, the movement expanded into formerly communist nations. In 1992, Hak Ja Han founded the Women's Federation for World Peace, aiming to encourage women to actively promote peace in their communities and society at large. The organization now has members in 143 countries. Now, let's talk about more modern. On May 1st, 1994, marking the 40th anniversary of the founding of the Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity, Sun Myung Moon declared the end of the HSA UWC era and inaugurated a new organization, the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, the FWPU.
FWPU.
That's how I'm going to say it from now on. This new organization included HSA UWC members and members of other religious organizations, all working towards common goals, especially on issues of sexual morality and reconciliation between people of different religions, nations, and races. The FWPU co-sponsored blessing ceremonies where thousands of couples from various churches and religions received the marriage blessing previously exclusive to HSA UWC members. During the 1980s and 1990s, the church's businesses expanded significantly, leading to substantial wealth despite a decline in membership numbers. In 1991, Moon announced that members should return to their hometowns to undertake apostolic work there. Massimo Intervine, a scholar of new religious movements, noted that this indicated that full-time membership was no longer deemed crucial for church members. In 1994, the New York Times acknowledged the movement's political influence, describing it as a quote-unquote a theocratic powerhouse that is pouring foreign fortunes into conservative causes in the United States. In 1998, the Egyptian newspaper Al-Ahram criticized Moon's ultra-right leanings and suggested a personal relationship with conservative Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
You know it's bad when Egypt, of all places, is saying you're too right-wing.
One of the most right-wing nations ever.
The nation that founded the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah. In 1995, former U.S. President George H.W. Bush and his wife Barbara Bush spoke at a FWPU event in the Tokyo Dome. Bush told the gathering that if he could have done one thing to help the country more during his presidency, it would have been to strengthen the American family by raising moral standards. Hak Ja-han, the main speaker, credited her husband with bringing about the fall of communism and declared that he must save America from the destruction of the family and moral decay.
Jeez, somebody get this guy a cape.
Right? In 2000, Moon founded the World Association of Non-Governmental Organization, WANGO, which describes itself as a global organization dedicated to serving its member organizations, strengthening the INGO sector, increasing public understanding of the NGO community, and providing support for the NGOs to solve humanity's basic problems. WANGO has been criticized for promoting conservatism, contrasting some ideals of the United Nations.
Nobody cares about the United Nations. They can't do anything.
In 2000, FWPU co-sponsored the Million Family March, a rally in Washington, D.C., celebrating family unity and racial and religious harmony along with the Nation of Islam. Luis Farrakhan was the main speaker at the event, held on October 16, 2000. You know what? I just realized this event, I bet you he's the reason for 9/11. They just said, you know what? Fuck this. Because look, October 16, 2000. 2000.
Yeah.
So right before, literally a year before, they were like, you know what? We don't like this guy. Fuck him. The 5th anniversary of the Million Man March, also organized by Farrakhan. FWPU leader Dan Pfefferman acknowledged that Farrakhan's and Moon's views differed on many issues, but shared a belief in a God-centered family. 2003, Korean FWPU members started a political party in South Korea, the Party for God, Peace, Unification, and Home. The inauguration declaration stated that the new party would focus on preparing on Korean reunification for educating the public about God and peace. And FWPU official mentioned that similar political parties would be established in Japan and the United States. Since 2003, the FWPU-related Universal Peace Federation's Middle East Peace Initiative has organized group tours of Israel and Palestine to promote understanding, respect, and reconciliation among Jews, Muslims, and Christians.
That doesn't seem to be going very well these days.
No.
On August 15th, 2012, Sung Myung Moon was reported to be gravely ill and was placed on a respirator in the intensive care unit of St. Mary's Hospital of the Catholic University of Korea in Seoul. He had been admitted on August 14th, 2012 after suffering from pneumonia earlier that month. Moon passed away on September 2nd, 2012. Following Moon's death, significant divisions emerged within the Unification Church. The Global Peace Foundation, founded in 2009 by Moon and Han's son Hyunjin Moon, along with the church leader Chung Hwan Quack, distanced itself excuse me, from the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification,
Stop it.
which is led by Hakja Han. In 2017, the Global Peace Foundation further solidified its separation by establishing the Family Peace Association. In 2014, Moon and Han's younger sons, Hyungjin Moon and Kookjin Moon, founded the Rod of Iron Ministries, also known as the World Peace and Unification Sanctuary Church. This new branch has been controversial due to its advocacy for private firearm ownership and its support for the January 6th United States Capitol attack. The Rod of Iron Ministries' stance on firearms and political events has starkly contrasted with the broader goals and principles originally set forth by Sung Myung Moon and the Unification Church.
So he dies, and the kids just split off and form their own little cults.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Pretty much. And just some... We're going to look at some theology of them. So, Sung Myung Moon's book, The Divine Principle, claims to have been revealed to him over 9 years after Jesus allegedly appeared to him on Easter Sunday in 1936, asking him to continue the work that Jesus could not finish due to his crucifixion. Your only hope, Sung Myung Moon. Yeah. The Divine Principle was first published as Wali Wanban, the original text of the Divine Principle, in 1945. The earliest manuscript was lost during the Korean War. A second expanded version, Wanli Hasol, or Explanation of the Divine Principle, was published in 1957. The definitive version, The Divine Principle, or Wali Gingnon, co-written by Moon and early disciple Hyo Won-yu, was first published in 1966, with an English translation appearing in 1973. The Divine Principle is considered the main theological textbook of the movement and is held as Holy Scripture by its believers. Just like any cult. Their leader writes a book, they follow it.
At least it's a book that's dedicated solely to religion, not like L. Ron Hubbard, who tried to pass off his shitty science fiction as a holy book.
We need to go buy his early books.
I really don't want to. I've read the excerpts of them. They really are bad. And this is coming from someone who likes the old pulpy science fiction fantasy stories.
Yeah, but he claims that he was the best science fiction writer of all time.
Yeah, okay. Whatever got him through the night.
And he's best friends with all of the science fiction writers, which he was not best friends, but he was friends with.
I mean, I really get the feeling he just paid a lot of money to hang out at their clubs, and they just kind of
some of the most
him.
prolific science fiction writers in history.
Oh yeah, no, some of the greats. I just don't think they gave two shits about them.
So, the core theology of the Divine Principle. The principle of creation. God created the world in His image, with all reality composed of bipolarities, including Sung Sang, inner character, and Hyung Sang, outer form, reflecting the relationship between soul and matter, as well as the relationship between yin and yang. He mixed Christianity and Confucianism.
I was about to say, when I was reading this,
It's Confucianism.
Yeah.
He just added God into it, because obviously in Confucianism, God doesn't exist.
And also his family, he would know about Confucianism because his family were Confucius for a time at least.
Because if you remember the world in Confucianism and in Asian culture, the world is on the back of a giant turtle that is floating through the ocean.
I gotta admit, I never really read too much into Confucianism.
It's actually it's some really cool stuff, and there's actually a lot of that's translated into like D&D and stuff like that.
I just knew about yin and yang. That's all I knew about it. I always thought that was Buddhism, really.
It's kind of all over Asia. God's fundamental energy aims to achieve a balanced and harmonious relationship of giving and receiving, with the highest relationship being with God. This relationship should ideally lead to union with God. That's very Christian, where a lot of modern Christianity is that Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship, and that the followers are called the bride of Christ. The principle describes 3 blessings: personal growth to perfection, establishment of an ideal family, and mastery of nature, ultimately leading to the realization of the kingdom of heaven. Mostly Christian on that part.
Yeah.
The fall of man. Humanity failed to fulfill God's plan due to the fall of Adam and Eve, who, before their completion, established a sexual relationship with Satan, resulting in a world dominated by Satan's lineage and evil. Or is he saying that they fucked a snake?
Yes. I guess so.
I was reading it.
They fucked a snake.
And literally, his thought is Eve fucked a snake.
My anaconda don't want nothing unless you...
That was bizarre. I read that. I was like, what? Huh?
Yeah, apparently he believes they fucked a snake.
I guess.
And that's why evil's here.
I guess.
Okay. Principle of restoration. The primary purpose of creation is the establishment of the kingdom of heaven on earth. God's efforts to save humanity are seen through historical attempts to restore the original sinless state. History is viewed as the history of restoration, with humanity currently living in the last days, awaiting the second coming of Christ, who will be successful in fulfilling God's purpose by sending the true parents of humanity. So take away that last line. The rest of that is Christianity.
Yep.
The last days, the revelations, waiting for the second coming, and all of that. But then this whole true parents of humanity, that's something he threw in there.
That was probably, I always suspect, after reading this, I suspect he threw that in there to keep everything centered on him and his wife. Because otherwise, he's just Reverend Moon.
Yeah.
He can be replaced, and he doesn't, and that can't happen.
A lot of, especially Doomsday cults, take Revelation way too seriously.
It was always funny because when I went to Catholic schools from basically kindergarten to my senior year of high school.
Not basically, you did.
I did. Well, yeah. And here's the thing: from every time, at some point, I remember in middle school. Apparently, my religious teacher said for as long as she had been teaching, someone always asked about Revelations, and this is what there is no official stance of the Catholic Church on Revelation, but this is what they teach them. Revelations is at best a metaphor for a lot of metaphors, because again, the Apostle John, who wrote it, was a poet by trade, so everything is a metaphor and a simile. At worst, it was written for a time that has long since passed, but it scares the this is not what Sister Eileen said, but scares the shit out of people and keeps people in line, because they'll read Revelation and be like, I better be a good Christian because I don't want that shit to happen to me.
And that's what I hated about church.
Well, again, they don't teach... Catholic Church never taught Revelations. We found all Revelations on our own. And they talked about all the good stuff and ministry and being a good Christian.
My church didn't. My church taught
Revelation. Most Christian churches teach Revelations. You will have sermons on Revelations. They will teach the fire and brimstone. If you do not come to God, you are going to hell. You're going to burn for eternity.
I have always only ever heard that in non-Catholic churches. And I have gone to church everywhere in Catholic churches. I've never heard one priest talk about fire and brimstone. I'm not saying they don't never have. I just, again, never saw it, and I'm pretty I could probably ask my aunt and uncle, my cousins who go to church back up in Buffalo. They probably can't remember either.
I get going to hell and stuff like that if I don't come back to Christ.
I've heard that, and again, I've just never heard that in the Catholic Church.
Come back to Christ, I should say. Go to actual in-person church.
Yeah, I've heard that. You know what?
So, here's my whole thing on that is I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on the podcast, but I was a Pentecostal youth pastor. I actually just got an email. It's my this is my 9th year as a reverend, technically. But so when I was a pastor, I never believed that you had to physically be at church. The Bible states that there has to be some kind of separation and that there has to be a focus and a study. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be in a building. According to the preachings of typical Christianity, the church is not a building, it's a people.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll get all these religious people that'll say, no, you need to go to church. You need to tithe. The Bible says you need to tithe. Number one, it doesn't. The Bible does not say anything about tithing. It says give what is owed to God, and give what is owed to man to man.
Render unto Caesar what that is to Caesar.
Exactly. So, and again, that was also Old Testament.
This is like my older generation family.
And again, that is the
that you have to be in church.
Oh, that.
And all that, even though I explained to them multiple times, I don't believe in organized religion, which is why I'm agnostic.
Yeah.
No, that's even Catholic Church. The old school Catholics are the same way. They were all like, you better be in that pew on Sunday. And you better
do your Hail Marys. And
yeah, exactly. That's old school.
Get into confession.
Yeah, that's old school. There's old school religions of everything, how they, attendance was mandatory, blah, blah, blah. It's the only way you get into heaven, blah, blah, blah. That's obviously not true.
And if my family ever finds this and listens to this podcast...
Surprise!
Yes, I still believe in God, but I believe in a whole hell of a lot, and we can have a very big discussion on how you found this.
But these guys are... Oh, boy.
So, they also believe fallen humanity can only be restored through the Messiah, the new Adam, who will enable humanity to be reborn into God's family. So, basically, no, they believe that Jesus was the new Adam.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They didn't believe Jesus was God. They believed Jesus was the new Adam and that he was going to marry and have a new Eve, and his lineage was going to be the new world, and then everybody else was going to die off.
Well, according to Dan Brown, it probably already happened.
Yeah. God has predestined all men for restoration, but has given them responsibility to fulfill this through their free will. Very close to Christianity.
Yeah.
Resurrection, described as a process of transitioning from spiritual death to spiritual life, ultimately uniting with God.
Christian.
Pretty Christian. Jesus came as a Messiah, but was crucified before fulfilling his mission. Spiritual salvation is possible through him, but the full restoration of the kingdom of God on earth awaits the second coming. So this is pretty similar to, obviously, Christianity does believe Jesus is the Messiah, but they believe that the crucifixion was his mission. That his mission ended with the crucifixion and purification through his blood.
The forgiveness of our sins.
Correct.
Yep.
And then the second coming is just taking those that believe, having them leave their physical bodies behind and coming with them to leave the world of suffering, while left behind is...
rapture.
Yes.
Yeah.
While those that are left behind are supposed to be left behind in a world of sin and torment and blah, 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 blah. So this is pretty close. They
reworded it.
They reworded it to what they wanted. That they were the second coming.
Yeah, they were the true parents.
The Bible, seen as a record of God's progressive revelation to mankind, with the divine principle providing deeper explanations consistent with biblical teachings.
Of course.
He basically said that his book is an addendum to the Bible that allows him to dig deeper. And so basically he's saying that he knows more than the prophets did.
Bullshit.
And the apostles.
Yeah. What you said.
Bullshit.
So the second coming, which is eschatology.
Oh, that's what that is.
Eschatology, yeah. It is the study of the second coming, the study of the rapture. You can actually, if you go to theologian school, you can study eschatology, and that can be your focus. So Christ's second coming will occur in this age as a man in the flesh who will marry and establish a family, becoming the true parents of all mankind. Accepting and following the true parents will remove original sin and establish God's kingdom on earth and in heaven, a day now believed to be at hand with Sun Myung Moon as the Messiah. So, I will tell you what the real second coming is supposed to be. Real second coming. Chariot of fire. You're supposed to see all of that stuff. Rapture happens. You will physically see bodies lifted up into the air. You will hear the trumpets sound. All of that kind of stuff. There is not supposed to be this family that is he basically said we're gonna just fuck each other till we have all these kids and they're all gonna be sin free. That's basically what his belief is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the second coming of the Messiah is not some 40-year-old Korean reverend who likes to bang some of the members of his congregation.
Exactly.
Who are underage.
So, Frederick Sontag gave some summary of key points. So, in their beliefs, God is an eternal, true, living person beyond space and time whose deepest essence is love. Different take on Christianity.
Yeah.
Man, created in God's image with the capacity to respond to his love and share in his creativity. Similar. God's desire for man and creation. Fulfillment of three blessings. Personal growth, establishing a sinless family, and dominion over nature. This takes a weird turn because personal growth, yes. Christianity also believes in growth between you and God, you and Christ. This establishing a sinless family is just his thing. And then this dominion over nature is something completely different. Basically, man rules everything and blah, blah, blah.
And that's not how it goes.
No.
I've never heard that in the Bible.
Sin resulted from Adam and Eve's illicit love, leading to a world dominated by Satan.
When they banged a snake.
Yes.
Yep.
Christology. Restoration through the Messiah who establishes the kingdom of heaven. Pretty similar. History. Restoration history marked by efforts to make indemnity for sin. Resurrection. Transition from spiritual death to life uniting with God. Predestination. God's desire for universal restoration with human responsibility in fulfilling this. Jesus came as the Messiah but was crucified with the full restoration awaiting the second coming. The Bible, a progressive revelation with the divine principle, his book, providing deeper insights.
Of course.
The ultimate renewal, solving sin through restoration, establishing moral standards, true families, and overcoming ideologies like communism.
Fucking commies.
Yeah.
Yep.
The second coming, eschatology. Christ's second coming as a man in the flesh to remove original sin and establish God's kingdom with some immune as the Messiah. So here's the thing. With this, they're saying in the second coming that Christ is supposed to come back into flesh. He's not. He already did that.
Yeah.
If you believe the Christian beliefs, Christ already came into flesh. There's nowhere in the Bible it says he's going to come into flesh again. He's already done that. He's not going to do it again.
It talks about the Antichrist.
Who is
coming
Who's Biden.
Who's coming into flesh.
No, it's not. It can't be Biden because the Antichrist is actually supposed to be smart.
And manipulated.
And beautiful and...
Oh, it ain't Biden.
Yeah, it's the Antichrist.
That's why everybody believed it was Obama.
Yeah. Antichrist is supposed to come into flesh.
Correct.
Yes. Actually, the Bible even goes so far as to, like, I remember this because there was actually a mini-series with Bill Pullman that I really liked. It talked about the Antichrist coming and everything. A lot of it was, like, hyperbole and sensationalized for entertainment because it was like a NBC thing, but it was... I remember because I looked up Revelation. I was like, wow, you like really fall to it, almost to a T of like how it's supposed to show. They're supposed to show up.
What's that book series that we
Left Behind?
Yeah, that we all had to read.
And Left Behind Kids.
I never read that.
There was two different ones.
There's
also movies.
Yeah, it's mainly it's mainly
it's all about
Bible-based churches.
It's all in the Rapture.
Read that.
Yeah.
So you have Left Behind, which was a whole series by Tim Hayes, I believe.
I've heard
and then there is also a kids version which goes through kids and kind of isn't as dark. It is dark, but not as dark.
I don't know how you could not make the Revelation. I had to
read both.
The books mainly were.
They actually were good books for what they are.
Yeah, but it was mainly to scare the shit out of people.
Yeah.
And kids to make sure that they stayed on the straight and narrow.
Yep. So let's go into the blessing ceremony.
This is what these guys are known for.
Yes.
Yes.
We're going to get into a lot of stuff because we're going to talk about their gambling stuff and all of that.
Yeah.
So The Unification Church is well known for its blessing tradition, a mass wedding ceremony and wedding vow renewal ceremony given to engaged or married couples. According to the church's beliefs in a serpent seed interpretation of original sin and the fall of man, Eve was sexually seduced by Satan, and thus the human bloodline is sinful due to being directly descended from Satan. Through the blessing, members believe the couple is removed from the lineage of sinful humanity and restored back to God's sinless lineage. So basically, Eve had sex with a serpent, the serpent nutted in her, and everybody is now born from the serpent.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's not how that happened.
The first blessing ceremony was held in 1961 for 36 couples in Seoul, South Korea, conducted by Sun Myung Moon and his wife shortly after their own marriage in 1960. All the couples were members of the church, and Moon matched all of the couples except 12 who were already married before joining the church. This was Moon's second marriage. He had previously married Soon Kil Choi in 1945, with whom he had a son in 1946, before divorcing in 1954. Later, blessing ceremonies grew larger in scale but followed the same pattern. All participants were members of the HSAUWC, and Moon matched most of the couples. In 1982, the first large-scale blessing ceremony outside Korea took place in Madison Square Garden, New York City, involving 2,000 couples. In 1988, Moon matched 2,500 Korean members with Japanese members in a ceremony held in Korea, partly to promote unity between the two nations. And she's going back to medieval times and doing unity of nations between marriages.
I mean, those kind of medieval marriages were done between royal lineages and noble homes.
I know, but it's the same concept.
It is. Well, I mean, in this case, I'm pretty sure he's doing it to take advantage of getting his Korean members gaining Japanese citizenship so that they can open businesses in Japan.
But why isn't that not the same thing? It literally is.
I mean, all over
strength. He's doing these marriages. So in medieval times, they did these to strengthen the kingdom.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he's literally doing the same thing. He's doing this to get the citizenships and the businesses, which strengthens his kingdom.
I mean, that's what happened with the kingdom of Castile and Aragon in Spain, the medieval. Ferdinand married Isabella. Combine that's why we have Spain.
Yeah. So Moon's practice of matching couples was highly unusual in both Christian tradition and modern Western culture, attracting much attention and controversy. The blessing ceremonies have been labeled mass weddings in the press and public imagination. However, in most cases, the blessing ceremony is not a legal wedding ceremony, probably because he's not a real priest. Some couples are already married, and those that are engaged are later legally married according to the laws of their own countries. The New York Times referred to a 1997 ceremony for 28,000 couples as a marriage affirmation ceremony, noting that the real weddings were held later in separate legal ceremonies. So these are pointless, basically.
Yep. It's just honestly proud because how much was he charging for people to go to these events for a mass wedding?
Tithes. And everything you own.
Yeah.
So, because they were only allowed for members of the church.
Mm-hmm.
So it basically, in this church, you had to sign over everything you owned. Mary Farrell Bednarowski describes marriage as really the only sacrament in the unification movement. Unificationists view singleness as not a state to be sought or cultivated, but as a preparation for marriage. Premarital celibacy and marital faithfulness are emphasized. Adherents may be taught to abstain from intimate relations for a specified time after marriage.
Huh?
Yeah.
The church does not give its marriage blessing to same-sex couples, just like every church. Moon has emphasized the similarity between unification views of sexuality and evangelical Christianity, reaching out to conservative Christians by emphasizing shared goals like support for sexual abstinence outside of marriage and opposition to homosexuality. Since 2001, couples blessed by Moon have been able to arrange marriages for their own children without his direct guidance. Some Unification Church members have also married partners who are not church members. Yeah.
That's to me, that's the most bizarre thing about them. Their teachings, I think, are really meant to mimic Christianity enough so that people will look at it at like a first glance and be like, "Oh, that's Christianity. It's a different denomination, but there it is." And they go in there, and then once they get sucked in more, they're like, "Oh yeah, this is really weird."
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at that point, the hooks are in you.
And honestly, the whole abstinence outside of marriage and shit.
Well,
that doesn't
it's also
work.
the abstinence in the beginning of your marriage.
Which I don't
understand that
You're
at all.
You're not supposed to consummate your marriage.
That's...
For how fucking long?
It's kind of the whole point of a honeymoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, plus, I mean, you need to test the car before you drive it. So, just saying.
Yes, you do.
Moon has faced criticism from various quarters, particularly regarding his claim to be the Messiah and the second coming of Christ, which has been rejected by Jewish and Christian scholars. Protestant commentators have criticized his teachings as being contrary to the Protestant doctrine of salvation by faith alone. Walter Ralston Martin and Ravi K. Zacharias, in their book The Kingdom of the Cults, disagree with aspects of Moon's divine principle, including the divinity of Christ, the virgin birth, Jesus' marital status, and the necessity of Jesus' crucifixion, his literal resurrection, and second coming. Criticism has also been directed at the divine principle's assertion that events like the First and Second World Wars, the Holocaust, and the Cold War served as conditions to prepare the world for establishment of the kingdom of God. Yeah. He thought that all of the greatest wars were God preparing the world.
Mm-hmm.
Some members of the Unification Church have complained about the practice of giving the blessing ceremony to non-members who had not undergone the same course as members. So now, here's the thing. So, like, most Christian churches, or at least the ones that I've been to, in order to get married at that church or by that pastor, you have to go through a course, a marital course.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to go through couples counseling in order to do this.
I think my church was the same, but I'm not 100% sure.
Because that's what I had to do. So, Moon's support of Nation of Islam leader Luis Farrakhan's Million Family March in 2000 also drew criticism, including from some members of his church. His relationship with Jewish scholar Richard L. Rubenstein, an advocate of death of God theology, has also been criticized, particularly since Rubenstein served on the advisory council of the Unification Church and the board of directors of the church-owned Washington Times newspaper. Additionally, Moon's possible relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was criticized by the Egyptian newspaper Al Aram, which labeled the Washington Times editorial policy as rabidly anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, and pro-Israel. Moon has also been criticized for advocating a worldwide automatic theocracy and advising his followers to become crazy for God, which, let's be honest, that's what Pentecostals do too.
That's what a lot of churches do.
So, the ideal family. Unification movement, based on Reverend Moon's teachings, emphasizes the importance of the Messiah completing Jesus' work by marrying and raising an ideal and sinless family as an example for others to follow, thereby restoring God's original plan for humanity. However, since Moon's death, his children have faced significant challenges in living up to this ideal. Several of Moon's children have been embroiled in controversies and personal struggles. One son was accused by his wife of cocaine addiction and domestic abuse, though he denied these claims and has since passed away. Another son tragically died by suicide, jumping from a balcony at a Nevada casino. And a third son, Hyung Jin Sean Moon, founded a separate church in Pennsylvania known as Rod of Iron Ministries, which focuses on guns and has drawn criticism for its extreme views and practices.
Not quite the ideal family the Reverend Moon had in mind.
No.
Yeah. So, in Moon and Hahn's teachings, Las Vegas was described as a city of Satan, and they aimed to amass believers to transform that hell into heaven. However, in 2022, reports from Shukan Bunshin and TBS News revealed that according to a transaction records compiled between 2008 and 2011 by MGM Resorts International, Hawk Jahan and 11 church executives lost approximately $6.52 million in Las Vegas casinos. According to a former domestic helper of Hawk Jahan, the religious president's favorite casino game was the slot machine.
How the fuck?
$6.52 million in 2 years.
That's that seafood money.
I'm just wondering if that wasn't why they said that Las Vegas was the city of Satan.
Yeah.
It's evil. I lost everything in the slots.
Oh, just wait. A senior believer claims that the funds squandered in the casino were donations from Japanese believers. Internal church records specify that donations totaling $9.51 million between 2009 and 2011 were intended for Las Vegas. Former Japanese chief of the church who participated in the church's Las Vegas tour testified that the church specifically instructed participants to carry $7,500 in cash as a donation, which was below the upper limit for customs declaration. Upon the arrival in the U.S., they would hand over their donations and be given a tour of tourist attractions such as the Grand Canyon, while only being able to meet Moon and Han once, unaware of their gambling activities in the casino. Yeah.
Now, this is one thing that I felt like I told Pam. I'm really surprised that they never decided to make these guys a Bond villain. Just all the stuff they're doing. This one,
yeah,
really.
These last two are gonna be So, according to the DIA, which is the Defense Intelligence Agency, reports in August and September 1994. Moon donated 450 billion yen to Kim Il-sung during his stay in North Korea from November 30th, 1991 to December 7th, 1992. And let's see.
Yeah, I never did actually figure out how much 450 billion yen was.
Let's see. It is...
How much is it in today's dollars?
$2.8 million.
Oh, shit.
Holy fuck.
Remember, our dollar is very strong compared to
That's true.
Japanese yen. So $2.4 million. This included establishing a joint venture developing a tourism at Kim Kong San, investing in the development of the Tumangang River, in addition to investing in the construction of the light industry base located in Wonsan. Most of the money was said to have been donated to the Unification Church by Japanese believers. According to the former chief executive of the Pyongyang Motors, a Unification Church auto company, the money collected from Japanese devotees was first transferred to South Korea and money laundered, then transferred to Hong Kong and finally North Korea. He said he had a closer relationship with Ju Kyu Chang, a senior member of the Workers' Party of Korea and its weapons development chief.
This is the guy who is responsible for getting the North Korean missile...
Ju Kyu Chang?
Yeah, up and running.
According to Baek Seung-ju, a former South Korean vice defense minister, has analyzed that money donated by Japanese followers of the Unification Church was diverted to North Korea's nuclear development and development of intercontinental ballistic missiles. According to Masuo Oi, who was the public relations director of the Unification Church, when Moon said to Kim Il-sung in a meeting, "Please be my brother," Kim Il-sung replied, "Sure, why not?" According to him, believers heard this anecdote and admired that the Messiah had brought Satan to his knees with the power of love. This was a symbolic event that marked a major shift in the anti-communist policies of the Unification Church. According to a 2016 South Korean Defense Ministry parliamentary report, a Tokyo-run company operated by members of the Unification Church sold a Russian Golf II-class submarine still loaded with missile launchers to North Korea in 1994, disguised as scrap metal, and the technology was then diverted to North Korea's development of submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Unification Church has denied having any relationship with the company.
I call bullshit.
I do too. They are literally anti-communist helping fund communism.
Yeah, they're all about money at this point.
I don't think that they were... I think they're
Communist.
Anti-communist, but they're really communist.
Oh, I don't think they're anti or pro anything. I think I think
they just want money.
Yeah, they're friendly to whoever will support them and give them their money.
So let's talk about them assassinating somebody in 2022.
Well, they seem to be behind the motivation of this.
On July 8th, 2022, Shinzo Abe was assassinated by former Maritime Self-Defense Force seaman Tetsuya Yamagami, whose mother is said to have been a member of the Japanese Unification Church since 1998. Yamagami claimed the church was behind his family's financial situation making his mother donate most of the family fortune to the church and saw Abe as deeply connected to the church. The assassination prompted sympathy for Abe, but also increased scrutiny that the Unification Church and the LDP, leading to backlash against them. It was found that almost half of the 379 National Diet Parliament members of Abe's Liberal Democratic Party admitted to some kind of contact with the Unification Church. The church maintained a volunteer army of members to work on political campaigns for Abe and other politicians in his party. The Unification Church is said to have historically had a close relationship with the conservative Liberal Democratic Party. Yamagami's mother reportedly sold land she inherited from her father along with the house she lived in with her 3 children. In June of 1999, she donated about 100 million yen, which is about $720,000, to the Unification Church, half of which was said to have been returned according to Reuters, leading to her family's bankruptcy in 2002 and significantly affecting their family, according to Yamagami. He also claimed he was unable to enter university despite graduating from a prestigious high school. His relatives, however, claimed Yamagami gave up on university after multiple failed attempts to enroll, being offered a place at Nara Sangyo University instead, which was not his preferred choice instead of his financial situation. His brother and his father would later commit suicide. Yamagami stated that his original plan was to assassinate Hakja Han. However, he gave up his plan because he could not get close to her. He believes Abe and his grandfather, Nobusuke Kishi, spread the Unification Church in Japan and decided to kill Abe after discovering online that Abe had sent video messages to organizations affiliated with the Unification Church. Police authorities were instructed by Chair of the National Public Safety Commission, Satoshi Ninoyu, alleged to have promoted a Unification Church event in 2021 to set up a panel to investigate the security lapses thought to have been involved in Abe's death. Japan's Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, the Democratic Party for the People, and the Japanese Communist Party expressed their intentions to launch separate investigations into the Unification Church's political influence and connection in Japanese politics. On August 31st, 2022, the ruling Liberal Democratic Party announced that it would no longer have any relationships with the Unification Church and its related organizations, and announced it would expel any members that did not break any ongoing relationships with the Unification Church. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida announced on October 2022 the Japanese government would start an investigation into the extent of Abe's relationship with the Unification Church. And to this point, they have not finished that investigation, as far as we know.
And, I mean, Japan is notorious for taking a long time with its investigation judicial process. I think it was only, like, maybe 5 years ago they finally got around to executing the guy who did the Tokyo subway nerve gas attack. Yeah.
When was that?
Like in the 90s.
In the 90s.
Oh shit!
Another actual religious cult we should look into that actually did one of the few that did a terrorist attack.
Yeah, they take forever for stuff. So, yeah, that was the Unification Church.
They're just crazy.
Yeah, they're psychos. So, with that, we want to thank everybody for listening, and thank you for visiting the Scarlet Tavern. Remember to turn in your glasses, push in your seat, and as always, tip the bard. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.